Welcome to another episode of Decoding Mastery, where we explore the lives of great masters from all over the world. Today, we are joined by a true legend in the world of advertising, David Deutsch. With over $1 billion in sales generated for his clients, David is not just a direct response advertising copywriter, but a copywriting coach known for delivering game changing ideas that make an impact. If you are looking to master the art of persuasive writing and unlock the secrets behind high converting copy, this episode is for you. David, welcome to the show. Hi, David. Welcome to my podcast.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here with you.
Yeah, how are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's starting to be spring down here
Yeah.
in North Carolina. So
Oh, great.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah. So you are a direct response copywriter and copywriting coach. And in fact, you are one of the best copywriters in the world. That's what I know about you. So, welcome again to my podcast. This podcast I started recently to cover the lives of masters like you who are excel in their field, who are one of the best in their field, and to try to find out what makes them different from others. Okay, what kind of habits they have, what kind of hobbies they have, what kind of lifestyle mindset they follow, rituals they follow. Okay, and what kind of sacrifices they made in their life to reach at this position. So I try to cover masters from music, from sports, from different kind of arts, and of course authors and writers like you. Okay. So David, my first question is like how you came into this field. What was your background and what hooked you? Like in your language, you say hook, that word in copywriting. So what hooked you in to this wonderful art? I can say that writing, copywriting.
Yeah. I think I sort of, was fascinated by writing and by words, right? I've always loved words. And I kind of fell into copywriting in a way. Um, I was when I got out of school, I did some teaching. Um, I was a music therapist for a little while, without credentials or anything like that, but just sort of did it in a treatment center. And I was sort of between jobs, and I took I'm a really good typist, right? Which
Okay.
used to be an actual skill that was needed. And so I did administrative stuff, on a temporary basis. And one of the companies I was working for was Ogilvy, right? Just coincidentally, right? I found myself in the middle of Ogilvy and Mather. And I thought, well, this is interesting. As long as I'm here, maybe I could write copy. I don't know. It looks like maybe something that I would enjoy doing. So I talked my way, or I proved my way into writing copy. And that kind of got me started on the journey of, working in ad agencies and writing advertisements and TV commercials and radio commercials and really all sorts of things. Um, and then one day I discovered Jay Abraham, and I realized, wow, there's a whole different way of thinking about these things. It's not just about being creative and being clever, although Ogilvy was never about being creative and being clever. But there's really a different way of thinking about leveraging resources and about direct response. It was really when I discovered that, wait, you cannot just build brands, you can actually sell stuff directly. You could advertise something and people will send money. This is fascinating. So that's when I sort of left advertising and got into direct response and worked with companies like Agora, which and Boardroom, and a lot of the supplement companies and newsletter publishers, as well as just all sorts of different companies. I've helped Procter and Gamble sell soap and sell toilet cleaner through direct response, right, by subscriptions for their um, ecological products, environmentally friendly products. They sell by subscription. And I've just sold all sorts of things, and it's really just been fascinating. I enjoy I kind of enjoy the writing, but more I enjoy the meeting different people and exploring different things and learning about different things, whether it's toilet cleaners and how you make toilet cleaners and what are the different kinds to, financial newsletters and learning about the world and different people's perspectives of the world. People like Jim Rickards or, Doug Casey or Bill Bonner, right? They have such different ways of looking at the world. And it was like, wow, I get paid for learning about how they look at the world and even getting to meet these people, right? Even getting to meet Bill Bonner and, Mark Ford and Jim Rickards and people like that and getting to talk to them. So, and also, people pay you a lot of money if you make money for them, right? Because it's measurable. Oh, if I get David Deutsch to write my copy, I get 10% more sales. If I have even a $2 million company and I get 10% more sales, that's 200,000. I think it's 200,000. $200,000. What's 10% of 2 million? Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, right.
$200,000. Yeah. So yeah, I'll gladly pay David Deutsch 50,000, 100,000, to have him do that. So, it's a very lucrative business as well. And of course, it's a very lucrative business for the people that, are maybe listening to this podcast that sell things directly, right?
Yeah. So, David, direct response copywriting is a familiar term in US, I understand, in Western countries. But just
Right.
for general, for the audience perspective, can you differentiate between direct response copywriting and marketing versus traditional marketing? What is the key difference between these two kind of marketing?
Well, marketing is a very broad term, right? If I sell apples on the street corner and I have a sign, I'm doing marketing, right? If I call it apples for sale, I'm marketing, right? I'm trying to get people to buy a product. So if I advertise on the Super Bowl and pay $10 million for Super Bowl advertisement, I'm marketing, right?
Yeah,
If I'm planning how to sell my thing and what distributors I should use and I'm marketing, right? So it's a very broad term for getting people to give you money for things, either in the long term or the short term. Direct response means you get a direct response, right? It means I don't run a Super Bowl commercial and hope that eventually more people buy my product or come into the store or do whatever, right? I run something and people either fill out something, they give me their email, or they send me money, through my website. I'm not selling through a store. I'm not selling through distributors. I'm not doing all those things. I'm directly selling to people, right? Send me
directly
money,
selling through,
I give
yeah,
you this. Yeah, send
directly
me money,
selling through your, yeah, website.
I
Okay,
give you this. Or
okay,
give me a response of some sort, right?
some
Because
sort
the
of,
response could be give me your email. And
okay,
then I email to them, and then I say give me money, right?
okay.
So
Sign-ups, email sign-ups,
yeah,
subscriptions. And in earlier years, you can say that it was direct mail order, like we used to see ads on
right, right.
newspapers, print ads. Okay, and there was coupon that you have to fill up the coupon and you can get the product
In
in this.
the good old
Yeah.
days,
Okay. Okay.
the good
Now
old days.
this is like transition into website and email copywriting. Okay.
Yeah,
Email
I
copywriting
would.
is one also.
Yeah, sure,
Hmm.
sure. I would just point out that there is still maybe more potential than ever to use direct mail and to use print advertising because few people do it.
Okay.
So it costs less now to advertise in the Wall Street Journal or your local newspaper. It costs less now. Well, there's less people trying to send people to your mailbox, right? So if someone gets something in their mailbox, they don't have a big stack of direct mail
Right.
of mailers in the mailbox. They've only got a little bitty stack. So your thing can stand out. So it can be a very powerful weapon. But
Okay.
I think also to the point, I think people like you and I that kind of came up through direct mail, right? And we used to have to pay right? To send things out. It used to cost money to mail stuff to people. And I think you learn from that how to be more efficient, right? You learn from that how to really be good at getting a response because you have to pay to get in front of people. Nowadays, it's so easy to get in front of people. You just type an email or send it out. Oh, it didn't work. Okay, this worked. There's less of that need to learn how to do it effectively. And I think that's to people's detriment, is that I think it was a great training ground for us
Yeah,
to have to be that, to have to pay for postage.
yeah. So,
Um,
David, when did you realize what was a breakthrough moment in your life, in your copywriting career, when you realized that you are not just an average copywriter, you are one of the best copywriters in the world? What what happened? At what time it happened?
well, that's an interesting question. I think it really kind of got driven home when I would go to AWAI, right? American Writers and Artists, when they had their boot camps, when they used to do it in person. And people would kind of come up and, oh, you're David Deutsch, like, I know who you are. And it's a weird feeling, right? To be famous, even if it's just in a little bitty world of direct response copywriters, and so I guess that was when I knew, okay, so people know who I am, and people call me legendary on social media sometimes. And I laugh and show my kids, look, your dad is legendary. And they roll their eyes
Okay,
and go, yeah, you're legendary, within this little, we are micro famous in this little world of, of your little world. Um, but I think a lot of that is just I've been around for a while, so there's a certain level of experience that just comes from that, like we were talking
okay,
about, right? Like I've seen the transition to the internet. I've done direct mail. I've done magalogs. I've seen the transition to digital and email and all that stuff. So I've worked with service companies and product companies, like Jay Abraham always says, you work for enough different companies, you take, oh, this idea works here. I'm going to use it over here. Oh, this idea works over here. I'm going to use it for this company over here. And you start to see patterns and you start to, see what works and what doesn't. And you've got a database of experience to draw on.
okay,
So
David.
that was
So,
a long answer to your question of when did I realize I was famous?
no, no, it's
But
perfect. Yeah. So, what do you think, David? What separates good copywriters from great copywriters? So, what is required to move from good to great?
I think there's a couple of things.
Okay,
I think a lot of it is drive, how driven you are to get better, how driven you are to make your copy better. I mean, there's a lot of copy that I see that really all it needs is for the person to go back and make it better, right? People quit. Like I think great copywriters, they just don't quit as easily. They just don't quit after the first draft, or the second draft, or the third draft, or the fourth draft, right? So that's one thing. And a lot of that is, of course, research. Like if you talk to great copyright, I remember I was talking to Jim Punchy once, and I was like, oh boy, I'm going to talk to Jim Punchy. He worked for Rodale. He's a great writer. I'm going to learn all these like techniques and tricks and things to do in copy, right? And all he wanted to talk about was the market and the prospect. It's like, do you think people are getting like, you think people are getting a little bit, tired of all this supplement stuff? Do you think people care about this? Do you think the market is kind of moving this way? Like, and I realized that's what makes him great is he wants to understand who he's writing to. And when you understand who you're writing to, when you really understand them on a deep level, not a superficial level, like, oh, they want to make more money and oh, they want their arthritis pain to go away. But when you understand on a deep level why they want more money to prove themselves, right? Why they want more money to live a certain way and be a hero to their family, or why they want their arthritis pain to go away. Not because pain is painful, not just that, but so they can pick up their grandchildren again. So people won't look at them as being old and frail and maybe put them in a nursing home one day because they can't, live independently anymore. Like when you understand on that level how people think about things, then it's easy to write really good copy, right? It's not so much, great copywriters know more techniques and they know how to do this and frame this. It's just they really get into the head of the people they're writing to. And
Yeah.
I think that's it too, right? Because you can know a lot of stuff about your prospect and about the market. But the important thing is to be able to kind of make that switch in your head where you're writing to someone, right? Or when you're reviewing your copy, you're reviewing it as if you're the prospect. And you go, oh, they're never going to believe this. And oh, that's not the way they would say this. And I don't know. I'm not feeling like this copy is quite yet motivating them to want this product, right? Let me change this and adjust this, right? So I think it's that too. It's a seeing. It's kind of a well, from an NLP point of view. What do they call that third perspective? Right? You can look at
Yeah.
it like as you can look at it as, you know, um, how another person looks at it, or you can look at it as I forget what the declension is in NLP. But there's a thing where you're actually looking through the eyes of another person. And I think that's what great copywriters do also, is they can do that. They can make that switch.
So basically, you can say that they are the bridge between the manufacturer, product developer, and the market. They understand the market and they know how to talk in market language. Because they understand their psychology, they understand what kind of life they live whole day,
Right.
what kind of pains they feel, fears in their life, what kind of desires they
Mm.
have, and all these things. So copywriter understand those things and try to convey the message of the manufacturer uh, in the language of the market, of the audience, of their target market.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So,
always love I was just going to say, I always love Chris
yeah,
Haddad's take on research, which is kind of, you don't need research. He said, you just go into your own head and like, if I had arthritis and you know, my wrist hurt all the time, what would my life be like? Right? Oh, I'd wake up in the morning and my wrist would hurt. And I would go, oh God, my wrist hurts again, right? I'm so tired of my wrist hurting. And I'd try to get out of bed. And as I pushed myself off the bed, I bet my wrist would hurt, right? Like it would be, oh yeah, oh God damn this wrist, you know? And then maybe my grandchildren would come over and I try to lift them up. And I would, like, oh, like I can't lift them up because my wrist hurts. And so I'd be afraid, like, oh, I can't reach this. I need help. Um, what if I get really bad and I can't live independently and my family puts me in a nursing home or something? Like this is terrible. So Chris is like, you don't need research for that, right? Just imagine yourself, you know, having arthritis, or imagine yourself being poor and needing money. Imagine yourself this. So I think that's kind of interesting take on it too, is maybe we do get a little caught up in research and don't
yeah.
use our brains enough to kind of envision what is it like to be in pain. What is it like? Just envision us imagining if we were our prospects and feeling their pain.
Yes.
Like that's a pretty easy thing to do if you just take the time to do it.
It's just like method actors, how they work,
Right.
like
It's
Al
exactly
Pacino,
like
Robert
method
De
acting.
Niro. They live their same life for a few months and then they become used to it. The same kind of dialogue, same kind of body language they adopt when they're working on a role.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, there's a great book by Denny Hatch called Method Marketing, which is
Yeah.
about applying, yeah, to that. A lot of times I tell people this is research actually, but it's also generating copy and generating copy ideas. I tell people go take your product and go sell it at a flea market, if you have that kind of product, right, that you can take to a flea market and go sell it and see what happens. Try to sell it to your friends or get your friends interested. Like, okay, maybe you have a service that you can't take to a flea market, but you can talk to a friend and say, hey, I've got this, I'm working for a company. They've got this service, it's blah, blah, blah. Are they interested? Right? If they're not interested, how would you get them interested? And then if you do that a couple times, you could then write great copy because right? Um,
Yeah,
you know what works, what doesn't, because you field tested it.
right.
I mean, Gary Halbert used to, you probably know, because you're a student of this stuff, right? Gary Halbert used to spend weeks when he got a product project doing nothing but talking to people in bars and, going out on his boat and talking to people about the product, right?
Yeah.
Looking at it, feeling, seeing people's reactions. Well, what if I said it was like this? Would you buy it? Would you be interested? No. How about if I said it like this? Let's talk about it. What do you think people do when they get this product or whatever, right? And he'd spend weeks doing that. So when he sat down to write copy, it just flowed right out. Because really,
So,
copy is just persuasion, right?
of
And you know
course,
how to persuade. We all know how to persuade. We know how to get our kids to do things they don't want to do. We know how to get our spouse to see a movie that we want to see or go to a restaurant we want to go to, right? We know how to persuade them. We just take what we know about them and we go, we kind of shape it in a way. We don't go through a list of, oh, maybe I should open with a story and then I should give her a startling fact about something. And then I'm going to highlight the benefits and I'm going to have proof. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm going to have proof of what, like we don't do that. We just naturally persuade. And I think that great copywriters are in touch with their natural persuasive ability more
yeah,
than not great copywriters.
yeah. Okay. So, David, you have worked with some of the best copywriters. You yourself is one of the, you said that you are a legendary copywriter, some people say. Okay. And you have worked with some of the best copywriters. So, if I
And
ask,
some of the worst, and some of the worst.
and some of the worst. Okay. So, I'm talking about the great copywriters. So, one quality that you found that is non-negotiable. That is the most important quality one should have to become a great copywriter. And you have found in all the top copywriters whom you have worked with. So what do you say about it?
Oh
Which
boy.
one quality?
Um, yeah. I mean, the one quality is really intelligence, right? They're smart, right? They're smart. You talk to Clayton Makepeace, right? When he was alive, right? Redneck, kind of, highly conservative, philosophy, but he was smart, right? John Carlton, kind of the opposite, right? The opposite politically and opposite personality, also really smart, right? All the people, Gary Halbert, right? Charming, witty, but a little more kind of, salt of the earth, grew up in a little town in the Midwest kind of thing, right? But smart, super, super smart. And like we're not all born smart, right? Um, but smartness is to some extent developable, right? Because smartness is seeing patterns and reproducing patterns, which is why intelligent tests, they show you a pattern and then they say which of these things follows this pattern, right?
Right,
Or they say, lamb is to sheep as cow is to, and then the answer is beef, right? Because you see the pattern. Oh, I see lamb, sheep, beef, cow, right? That's the food name of this animal. I see the pattern. So I think if you want to be the kind of smart that makes for good copywriting, learn to see patterns. Learn to see patterns in copy, right? Don't just look at copy and go, oh, that it does this, this, this. Say, oh, I see the pattern here. It's this pattern. This is like a story-based thing. Here are other story-based things. This is the pattern. This is the pattern of this, right? It's like benefit proof. Benefit proof is the pattern. Or story, lesson, story lesson is the pattern. Or what's the pattern of the sentences? Oh, look, the pattern of the sentence is, say something and give a little proof, or say something clever and relate it to something else. Or the pattern is long sentence, short sentence, long sentence, short, like whatever it is, right? There's so many different ways of looking at patterns. Um, so I think, and a lot of times intelligence is also the ability to focus and be concentrated, right? Somebody that, the writers that I know lock themselves in a room and write for a couple of hours, right? They don't write in little bits and pieces. They're really good writers, right? They don't write in little pieces. They don't, do a little and go away and do a little and come back because it doesn't have that concentrated effort. Just like if you have a magnifying glass and you want to burn through paper, right?
Yeah,
And from the sun's rays, you don't like hold it and go away and hold it and go away and hold it and go away. It won't cumulatively add up to burning through the paper. You have to hold it steady in order to burn through
right.
the paper. And the same way you have to hold your mind steady to burn, which is hard for me because I have a very distracted mind, right? But you have to hold it steady to burn through the paper. And so that's another way to be smart when you're writing is just, Cal Newport deep work, writing in, blocks of concentrated time, focusing, right? Like really
Focusing.
thinking deeply
Yes.
about things, right? And sometimes it's hard to think deeply about things just thinking because your mind wanders and you get distracted, right? So sometimes the way to think deeply about things is to write down on just your thoughts, right? Oh, I'm selling toilet cleaner. Toilet cleaner is an interesting thing. Like nobody wants to clean their toilet, but it's got to be done. And, so what do people look for? Well, they look for these three things, I think. And, maybe I could but that helps me. Like if I kind of write, it keeps my mind focused. If I do a little mind map, right? It's like, oh, there's this, then it branches into these three things. And then, oh, we look at each of these three things, branches into these three things, right? And all of a sudden I'm thinking in a more concentrated way than if I just sat and thought, let me think about this. Like, how is this connected? I don't know. What am I going to have for lunch? It's almost lunchtime. I'm getting, right? So I think you got to find what's helpful. Sometimes talking is helpful, right? I'm far more intelligent right now talking to you and make my mind has to be concentrated and think about things than I would be if I was sitting down and going, how should I write about intelligence? I don't know. Where should I begin? I don't know. But somehow I began, right? Because I'm talking and I'm still talking. So I think a lot of times talking out loud, talking to someone else, talking on the page is a way to be more intelligent when it comes to writing. So again, if we're not all born with really being super intelligent, but it is something that's developable, right? You can be smart about writing. So I think that's really the key thing is the great writers that I know, they all have that one thing in common. They're smart. You talk to
Yes.
them about anything and they're smart about it.
Superb. Very good. So, David, you coach other copywriters. So, what common mistakes they make, especially the beginners?
Well, I think if we reverse engineer what I've been talking about,
Hmm.
they don't look at their copy
Okay.
through the eyes of the prospect. They don't even look at the copy through their own eyes in a certain way. Because if they, you know, I wouldn't say I'd be out of a job, but I could certainly coach them on a much higher level if they would just look at their own copy and see that it's boring
Hmm.
and see that it's not going to convince anyone to buy. Because I think if someone else read it and gave it to them, then they would go, oh, this is really boring and it's never going to convince anyone to buy. And it's not even believable, right? But somehow when it's your own copy, you don't see that because, oh, there's a deadline and, I don't want to have to rewrite it. So there's a natural inclination not to do that. So that's a big mistake, I think, is just writing on automatic pilot. They write like what they write like what sounds like copy that they've heard before, right? They don't write like we talked about from their inner persuader, right? They're afraid to do that in a certain way. They're hanging on to, yes, it's like this, but it's not your fault, right? Or, things that sound like, ancient, jungle cure discovered, that switches off arthritis pain or whatever, right? They're kind of reproducing stuff they've heard in their head, which is ironically what AI does, except it does it on a bigger scale. It reads billions of things and then it sort of makes something that sounds like that. But that's the danger with AI is a lot of people don't have the discrimination to recognize, oh, that just sounds like everything else. And people are going to kind of not respond to that. It's not human. It's not interesting. It's not involving. It doesn't draw you in. It just sounds right. And so more and more, that's the kind of copy we're seeing these days, right? Is AI copy. And one of the things that I teach people to do is how to use AI intelligently. This was probably your next question, but one of the
Yes.
things I teach people to do is to use AI in a smart way, not in oh, hey AI, write me a sales letter, for this. And then AI writes it and they copy and paste it, right, into their document and there's the letter, right? That's not that's not how to use AI.
So is it impacting direct response copywriting, AI and other technologies in a good way or in a bad way?
Well, both.
Both.
Right? Yeah,
Okay.
both people in a bad way. It's impacting that, AI reads its own copy in a way, right? So there's this flywheel
Hmm.
of, it
Okay.
writes AI copy, it reads AI copy, it writes more copy that sounds more and more kind of like AI copy.
Okay.
Um, so, and plus, in a bad way, people
It
use it.
sounds mechanical. It sounds mechanical.
It sounds mechanical. It sounds like there's
Hmm.
no unique human
Human
experience
touch.
in it, right? It uses certain words. It says things in a certain way. It's inoffensive.
Hmm.
Uh, if you study AI copy, you can kind of see the patterns of it, right? Um, it doesn't have personality. Like if you then go read Gary Bencivenga, Gary Halbert's copy, right? How much warmth and personality is in there? Gary Bencivenga's copy, all the warmth. John Carlton's copy, which has got that edgy, ballsy, kind of in your face voice to it. AI can't do that. If AI tries to do that, it sounds like a parody of John Carlton. It doesn't sound like John Carlton, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it's an interesting experiment to say to AI, take my copy and make it sound like John Carlton. And then you realize, wow, okay, look what it did. That's interesting. Let me try to incorporate a little of John Carlton now that I understand it better from what AI just did. Let me try to incorporate that into my writing. Like AI is a great teacher.
Yes.
But anyway, that's the last bad way is people misusing it, right? Because they don't have the discrimination to know, no, this isn't right. It only sounds kind of right. Like we're very,
I think David, AI can help in research. AI
oh
can
yeah,
help in research. Instead of writing copy, you can take help of AI when you're researching about the project. Am
yeah,
I right?
yes, absolutely. Yeah, I was going to get to the good
Okay.
things. And
Okay.
certainly, you're absolutely right. The research is one of the good things
Yeah.
that it can do. As long as you're careful and use perplexity and get sources and make sure you don't just take,
Hmm.
you know, directly. Um, but also to use AI, first of all, it can teach you if you say to it, okay, here's a thing from John Carlton. What are the 10, what is John Carlton's writing? What makes it so powerful? Right? And AI will tell you, well, he uses a lot of personal things and he uses colorful language. He uses a lot of active verbs. Okay. And then you kind of study that. Oh, yeah, look, he does use a lot of active verbs. Oh, yeah, look how he, kind of said that. Look how he's a little bit like Dan Kennedy, right? What makes Dan Kennedy's writing? AI can tell you, well, Dan Kennedy is kind of challenging. He's like a stern parent. He pushes your buttons. You go, you look at the copy, you go, yeah, damned if they're not right. Look at how he does that. Let me see the pattern of that and let me try to reproduce that pattern in my own way, right? So it's a great teaching tool. I mean, hell, you can even say to it, give me a 10-day course for learning copywriting, you know. Um, the other thing is if you use it to write, if you want to use it to write copy or help you write copy, you need to use it like for steps along the way, right? You need to not just write me a letter, but okay, AI, let's create an avatar together. Let's figure out who we're writing to. Here's what I know. What am I missing? And AI might say, oh, well, you're missing this about the avatar, and you're missing that. And, you know, from my own knowledge, I know that this person is probably, and you need to include this in the avatar. Okay, now we've developed an avatar together. Okay, let's develop a concept together, a copy strategy together, or let's develop a creative direction together, right? Like a creative brief or something like that, right? Well, you know, here's the competitors' ads. Here's the, you know, here's our ad. Here's, you know, whatever. Help me write a brief. You know, I say, oh, I took all that. The competitors do this. Competitors don't do this. Your advertising seems to do this, but it's missing this that the competitors do, right? So, oh, now we're starting to get a strategy here, right? It's like there's this hole in the market, right? We don't say this thing that the competitors say. How can we integrate? Okay, so let's take that. Now let's take all that and okay, AI, now like write an outline of the copy, right? And so maybe I might write an outline. You look at the outline, you go, oh, that's good. Oh, that's not so good. This needs to be moved here. Hey, AI, what do you think of if we move this here and this here? And oh, AI, I go, oh, that's great. Yeah, but I don't know. This really shouldn't be. That really should be at the end. Okay, so now we've developed an outline, you know, in partnership, right? And same thing with the copy. Maybe I do a first draft and I say to AI, what do you think of this in relation to the strategy we developed? And it says, oh, you great job, but you know, you missed this, you know? Okay, what would you do for paragraph 4, AI? And you know, it'll do that. And so you take that, you go, okay, I wouldn't do exactly that, but you know, I'd do something like that. You put it in there, right? And then you give the whole thing to AI and you say, what do you think? And AI has some suggestions and you revise it. You give it back to AI. You say, what do you think? Say, well, you know, you implemented a lot of the suggestions right, but you really messed up in the middle there with this. So now I go back and I can fix that. So that's working with AI like in a kind of a partnership, not so much in a, you know, depending on it to write copy for you, which
Yeah.
there's a real danger there. Maybe the biggest danger there is the atrophying your brain, the creative part of your brain, the thinking part of your brain, right? So we don't think, what are the 3 reasons people might buy this product? You know, so, well, we type into AI, what are the 3 reasons people might buy this product? AI spits it back out. And we haven't, so that muscle gets weak now, the creative muscle, the thinking muscle, right? We say to AI, come up with 10 headlines. We don't come up with the 10 headlines.
Yeah,
So
David, Eugene Schwartz used to say that every problem is different and every problem needs a different breakthrough solution.
yeah,
So AI can't, they are giving the same answers. They are not giving the unique solution like that. And copywriting is a thinking job. You have to find out a breakthrough uh, solution for the problem.
yeah,
Every problem is different. Mm. So, David,
yes.
as you are a coach, so what is easy for you to make a salesman a great copywriter or a writer, conventional writer, turning into a great copywriter? What is easier
Or
for you?
make a great copyright, make a copyright
Yeah,
into a great
the person
salesman.
who's a student. Yeah. If one
Yeah.
student is a salesman and the other is a writer, so which one is easier for you to turn into a
Well,
great copywriter?
I would say it's probably easier for the salesman because heck, they're selling with words. It's not like they're selling with gestures, right? And I've got to teach them how to create words. Now it's just a matter of how do you take the words that they say to someone in person and put them on the page, which of course is really what I train copywriters to do is how do you take the words that you would say in person and put them on the page? Because
Okay.
really the problem with most copywriting is it just kind of fails the what would you say to someone in person test, right?
Okay.
Like if you're trying to sell to someone you care about, like your sister or your mother, would you say, hey, new killer solution enables you to erase wrinkles totally from your face and look 10, look 20 years younger. And like, would you say that to your sister or your mother, right? Like, why would you say it to people, other people who, you know, um, and so then you go back and how do you say that in a believable way, right? Because you're just creating resistance when you say it like that. You make big claims, you create big resistance. So I think a salesman, to get back to your question, would probably look at that and go, yeah, no, I wouldn't. Don't do that. Right? You lead in with something that shows, hey, I know what it's like to look older. I know what it's like to feel ignored. I know what it's like to no longer walk in a room and turn heads. I know what it's like to feel like maybe my husband's going to stop loving me if I don't, if I look older. You know, well, we all age and we can't avoid looking older, but there are things you could do, right? There are ways to make wrinkles less noticeable. There are ways to make your skin glowing again. Like, so now it's like, wow, it's like one girlfriend talking to another. It's not like you know, some snake oil salesman trying to sell you something and that people have tried to be selling you this, they see it all the time, right? All these wild claims. So yeah, I would say give me the salesman and I'll teach them how to write rather than give me the writer and I'll teach them how to sell. Although
Yes, yes.
I've seen both work.
Oh,
You
yes,
know what
yes.
I mean?
Because I think in your case, you were a writer uh, when you started,
Yeah, I mean, I was always kind of good with words and good with
Mhm.
writing and good with, you
And then
know,
you learn how to sell. Then you learn how to sell.
yeah. And
Okay.
fortunately, unfortunately, I worked at Ogilvy, which was very selling oriented,
Yeah.
even though it was a regular Madison Avenue ad
So David
agency.
Ogilvy was a door-to-door salesman. When he started his, I think his first job was a door-to-door salesman, selling some home utensils, something that kind of
Yeah,
stuff.
stoves, I think.
Yeah, I
I think
think
he
he
sold
has
the
written a
Acura.
manual. Do you know he has written a manual on that? It is considered one of the. I have not read it, but it is considered one of the best manuals on sales.
Yeah, no, it's a good man. I have a copy if you want.
Oh, do you have? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. It's well, his writing is just so clear.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things I think you should be able to do as a copywriter is to be able to identify different people's writings. The fingerprints. What are the fingerprints? The fingerprints of Ogilvy's writing is that it's erudite, right? It's smart. Doesn't talk down to people. He's not afraid to use a big word every now and then. And it's clear. It's crystal clear, right? There's no, oh, I wonder what he means by that. There's no, oh, I got to go back and read, kind of, reread that to see that sentence to see what, those little split second, got to go back a little. Okay, now I got it. Um, and the manual is like that. It's just clear, right? Even
Okay.
though it's just a boring stove manual, or
Great.
it's a manual for selling it. I forget what it is. I think it's a manual for selling it. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I think I read in one of his books, I think Ogilvy on advertising, where he mentioned about that manual, or maybe the Confessions of an Ad
yeah,
Man. Maybe he has mentioned there. So I can see so many books behind you. If I'm not wrong, in Gary Bencivenga's retirement seminar, he mentioned about you that you suggested that instead of reading hundreds of books, just focus on reading 10 classic books.
right, right, right,
Okay.
right.
So can you share the list of your 10 classic books that you keep
Sure,
rereading?
sure. Um, Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz.
Okay.
And The Brilliance Breakthrough by Gene Schwartz. We can count
Brilliant
them as,
breakthrough. Okay.
yeah. That's more about writing from a sentence syntax point of view.
Okay.
Brilliance Breakthrough is more about advertising in general and psychology and all that. Um, Certainly Ogilvy, any book on by Ogilvy, Confessions, um, or Ogilvy on advertising. Um, I think you want to read Ogilvy on advertising and you want to read Confessions because in the same way that you want to read Hopkins, My Life in Advertising, and Scientific Advertising, his
Okay.
scientific advertising, because as Jay Abraham taught me, you learn a lot about how someone thinks and how they do what they do by learning about their life, their biography. You learn a lot about, you want to learn about, you know, Napoleon. You could study his tactics and what he did and his philosophy, but you learn a hell of a lot reading his biography and seeing the context of what he did and why he did it, right? And the evolution of it. So don't just read books by people. Don't just read how-to books by people. Study the life of people. Okay, so that's Hopkins and Ogilvy, and you want to read John Caples, right? Tested advertising methods, preferably the older editions, not the new one. Um, you want to read maybe uh, what's Victor Schwab's book? I forget, but the book by Victor Schwab.
Okay.
um, on advertising or advertising something. That's a great book. Um, and I think then you're sort of set. Um, you want to read books about that help you understand people, right? You want to read Eric Hoffer's book, The True Believer, I think it's called. It's a great little book about mass psychology and why people believe what they believe. You want to read Robert Cialdini, which is a great Influence, which is a great
Yeah.
book on persuasion, right? You at least want to know his 10 principles, his 7 persuasion principles. Um, you want to read, there's a book by Jerry Spence, How to Argue and Win Every Time. Jerry Spence is a trial lawyer who won like every case. He the Johnny Cochran of his day, right?
Hmm.
Won every case. And he really talks about how to convince not just a jury, but how to convince people. Because in a way, you want to convince people the same way you convince a jury. You want overwhelming proof, right? You
Right.
want it to be beyond a shadow of a doubt that what you say is true. So and it's a fun book because it's about his
Okay.
trials and, all the things he did. You want to read at least one book about screenwriting because I think one of the best ways I have in my coaching to help people be better copywriters is to have them think more like a screenwriter than a copywriter, right? Because screenwriters have to show, right? That this person said this to this person. This person went here and did this and then that. And then, there's some suspense, right? And I think too many copywriters are, this study showed that, right? Rather than the scientists gathered around the table to see the results of their study. And they were shocked to find that this little indescript weed of an herb actually made the arthritis vanish in 9 out of 10 cases. I mean, that's a little bit of exaggeration, but you see how you could be a screenwriter or you could just be an explainer and write boring stuff, right?
Right.
So learn
Right.
screenwriting, learn how they do what they do, how they create suspense. And that's also being a storyteller too. So that might be enough to read a screenwriting book, especially one like Save the Cat or something like that, or um, McPhee's, or not McAfee, not McPhee's, but I forget his name. But Story is a famous, McKee is got a big book about story. But just know the principles about story. Just read a basic book, even, Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey, the basic story of a hero being called to something and going out and, for the adventure and bringing back knowledge. That's the basic story behind every origin story of a supplement or somebody went out and was called to do something and came back, and or it's the three acts, right? Of a how do you structure a story in three acts? Just know
Okay.
that stuff. Read a basic book about that. Um, and I'm trying to think what else. You've got your persuasion, you've got your, um, the storytelling, yeah, the storytelling, the screenwriting, the argumentation. Read a good book on argumentation. Learn how to logically, like what is logic, right? What is argumentation? There's things
Yeah.
called warrants, which are really interesting. And a warrant means, okay, I can give you proof, right? This, this guy's a great doctor because he taught at Johns Hopkins, right? But there's no warrant to it. There's no proof of the proof. And the
Okay.
proof of the proof is Johns Hopkins is the leading medical institution in the United States. They have a rigorous, to get to teach at Johns Hopkins like this guy does, you have to go through a year-long process of they investigate you, they test you, they put you on a trial basis. Only the cream of the cream gets to teach at Johns Hopkins,
Okay.
right? So that's a warrant. That's the proof of the proof.
Proof
Because
of
I
the
think a
proof.
lot of the times we just throw something out there and we say, "Oh, look, this proves it." Well, it doesn't. You have to prove that it proves it.
Yeah.
But that's just one of the, like, how do you create an ironclad argument, right? A
Yes.
lot of times I read copy and it says, and so therefore you should do this, right? And I'm going, you haven't proved that, therefore I should do this. You've thrown out a bunch of stuff and there's no, this leads to this and this leads to this. There's no A is true and B is true, therefore C is true. There's none of that. You've just said some stuff. And now you're acting as if you've proven something. You haven't proven anything, logically. So I think just kind of knowing, just having that,
Logical argument. It's
yeah, just
important.
kind
Yeah.
of knowing how that works and being on the lookout for
Right.
did I really prove this? I think is
Yeah.
important.
So, David, Gary Bensinger mentioned in his seminar that one of the
Hmm.
biggest enemies of today's marketers is clutter. Okay. So, what kind of, in the oversaturated market, I can say, how do you come up with breakthrough ideas to get the attention of people, and then how you let them to take action in your favor? So,
Well,
I'm talking about breakthrough
I,
ideas. How do you come up with it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's two answers to that. One
Okay.
is maybe you don't need a breakthrough idea. Maybe you just need to go, hey, you know, or maybe you need to go say,
Okay.
hey, look, here's a gold bar. Like, do you want to buy this gold bar for, a quarter of the price? All right. Um, Dan Rosenthal used to say sometimes when you have a duck for sale, you just need to say duck for sale, right? And people that want a duck, they'll buy the duck. You don't
Yeah.
need to,
Right.
gild the lily. Um, and I think you need to think about how do you get people's attention in real life, right? You tell them something that makes them want to know more. Like if you tap your spouse, partner, whatever on the shoulder and go, hey, honey, want to know about blah, blah, blah? Like, what's the blah, 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 right? You can't just say, hey, honey, you want to know about a killer new breakthrough that's, going to put, plastic surgeons out of business and it's like a facelift in a bottle? And they would probably go, no, why are you talking like that? You're a crazy person. But, if you say to them, oh, hey, you want to know about this new face cream that, what it does is it works just like stem cells, right? It kind of, it like forces your skin to grow new, younger cells. Like your spouse might say, oh, well, yeah, that sounds interesting. No kidding. Like, tell me more. So, how do you get that tell me more thing, right? You just be believable, you be calm, you tell them some startling fact, right? Hey, I tried
Yeah.
to get this face cream at the drugstore and they were all sold out. Like, this is crazy. People are buying this thing. And so your spouse might say, yo, what is it? Right? That's interesting. So you kind of use that, right? Um, or you just like when you say breakthrough ideas, It's like a new way of looking at things. It's like just a way to get people's, like Porter Stansberry when he was first talking about internet stocks and how big the internet was going to be, right? He called it a new railway across America. That was the big idea because in their time, the railways were the big tech innovation. The railways were the big
Yeah.
thing that people got rich investing in. And that was a big idea to make that analogy and to say, this is going to be like that, right? So how do you do that, right? I mean, I teach, I have a course actually, and I teach people to be very systematic about coming up with a breakthrough idea, right? So you go through, you ask yourself certain questions like, well, how can I do the opposite, right? Sometimes a breakthrough idea, like, if you say to your wife, hey, honey, you want to know how to make your wrinkles worse? Right? Like they could be intrigued by that a little bit. Like, you want to know something you're doing that makes your wrinkles worse? Something you do every day that makes your wrinkles worse? Well, now you got their attention. And you could say, well, you're frowning too much, or when you wash your skin at night, it dries it out, and then you sleep and it makes your wrinkles worse. And then you could say, you want to know how to make your wrinkles go away? Well, here's a skin cream that I just found out about, right? Because you've
Yeah.
got, like you said, you've broken through the
There is
clutter.
a technique in NLP called pattern interrupt. Like the person,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. So basically, they say that every person is in a trance. Every time they are in a trance. So to break move them from one trance to another trance, you need to interrupt their pattern. So such kind of headlines, such kind of things, like you are saying that want to make your pimples ugly, or you want to make them ugly.
Right.
So
Do it.
basically, you are just trying to talk in opposite way so that you catch their attention.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if it's new, people want what's new, right? New breakthrough, actually changes your cellular DNA, in order to make you look 10 years younger. Like, okay, I might have to read that. Or why French women don't get fat. That's a great creative breakthrough idea I mean, even though it's something we do all the time, why women in China don't get breast cancer, and that there's a place where people live to 100. Like, we use that a lot. But that was a great example of that.
Even I
And
saw one headline of Gary Pennsylvania, "Get rich slowly." So people generally used
right.
to see ads, "Get rich quickly." So it was completely like a different kind of thing, that get rich slowly or gradually. Maybe I don't remember the exact headline, but that was again a different kind of thing for them, for people,
And like you
because
say,
they
a pattern interrupt,
patent.
right? Because they have a pattern of get rich quickly, and
Yeah,
now we see get rich slowly. And it's like, oh, you interrupted my pattern. What the heck is going on here? But
yeah,
that it's so brilliant because then you go, I wouldn't mind getting rich slowly. This guy sounds very reasonable, right? This is
reasonable,
not, sounds like it's not a
practical
lot of
thing.
hype.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, that's what we were talking about before too, is pattern. How can, because if you're a smart
yes,
person, you look at that and you go, get rich slowly. How can I use that for what I'm doing? Not steal his headline, right? But can I say, cure your arthritis slowly? Or if you're looking for a quick fix, this isn't it, right? This is, this fix takes time, but it will fix it. Like, that's a very powerful,
it sounded believable.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's believable, it's powerful, and it's taken the pattern
Yes,
of get rich slowly, but it's duplicated it in a different way, right? And I think really that's why smart people make such good copywriters, is because they're able to do that.
right.
And you too, the people in the audience can do that, right? You just
Yes.
have to intentionally, when you look at something, you don't want to just copy it, right? Get rich slowly, cure your arthritis slowly, make money slowly. You want to see the basic underlying thing behind it, right? What is the basic pattern? What's the concept? What's the deep down idea, which is to take a hyped up promise and make it shockingly less hype, but still good. right?
Yes. Yeah.
You know,
Okay. Yeah, right. Right. So, David, can you walk us through your process of writing copy, like you are writing sales letter? Okay. Right. How you started from scratch? What process you generally follow?
if you try include a week of panic, or is that part of the process? No. Um, the first thing is just to start thinking about it without knowing too much, right? Because I think that kind of clean slate thinking sometimes leads to things that you can't necessarily use, but that you but may give you ideas for things, right? Oh, I wish I could say this. That would be great. Like, whoa, what if I did this? And then you find out, oh, you can't do that. That's not compliant. That's not this. That's not that. But it gives you an interesting starting point. And maybe some of it you can use. So I like to do some thinking kind of beforehand. Um, and then, of course, there's the stage of, okay, and I like to do thinking and ideating all through the process, right? Because then the next step is go through, the background, right? Find out what you can, what is the product, what can I learn about it? And of course, this is the same as if it's your own product and you want to write about it. What's the science behind it? Even if you're a coach, you're a life science coach, let's say, lifestyle coach. How does coaching work? What's the science behind coaching? Anyone done any studies about coaching? What do people feel about coaching? Why do people get lifestyle coaching? What do they want? What does that mean? They want a better life. They want to be more successful. They want to make more money. Do they want to be looked up to more? Do they want to, what's the pain that they want to alleviate? Right? That's what I'm trying to do, is to just find out those sorts of things, which involves going through a lot of background and a lot of, you know, talking to the client, talking to people who use the product. That Gary Halbert, I talk to my friends, go out on a boat and talk to people and go to bars, and, you know, um, and at the same time, so I'm writing and I'm thinking maybe headlines, maybe this way of talking about it. You want to develop like a pitch, right? Because a lot of times I think the problem with copywriting is there's no great pitch behind it. This person couldn't get someone interested in this product in 30 seconds or a minute or 5 minutes, right? They're just sort of using the writing to figure out what they want to say. No, know what you want to say before then, right? Know how you would say, if you knocked on someone's door, how would you sell this thing to them? Because you are knocking on someone's door. Every person that opens your sales page or your email, you're knocked on their door. They open the
Right.
door. What do you say to them? Well, if you literally knock on your friends' doors or call them up or talk to them about it, you'll be able to write a lot better having done that, right? Having gone through that process. Um, so that's kind of where I like to get before I start to write. And then I may just write little fragments of things. I may not start at the beginning. I might start at the order form. I like to kind of come up with a headline first, or come up with a lead to the VSL or the video or whatever it is, or um, a subject line for the email. Um, but I like to, even though I resist it, I like to just do a rough draft as quickly as possible in order
Okay.
to have something. Because I'm a good iterator. I'm a good improver. So the faster I can get something on paper to improve, the you know the better. And I love nothing more than being given copy and saying, help me improve this, or improving it for them. Because
Okay.
I don't like starting from scratch, because it's when I see something on paper, it's really easy to go, oh, that's not the way to do it. This is the way to do it. Um, and then again, part of the process too is working with AI. It's like, researching, iterating back and forth, thinking it through, hey, AI, what are the 10 objections you think people would have to buying this widget? You know, hey, AI, what do you think the avatar, like we talked about before, describe the avatar to me based on this sales page, based that someone that is the sales page the company did before, based on these competitors' things. Who do you think is the market for this? And then AA might say this person, and I might go back to clients and say, is this right? And they might say, well, not quite. It's a little more this person. They're a little older, or younger, or they don't really think that way. They think this way.
Okay, David. So, how do you balance creativity with proven formula? You said that you generally try to edit copy which is already written and try to make it better from your perspective that it should include these things. So, how much weightage you will give to proven formulas that always work as compared to being bit creative? Like generally, copywriting people are try to creative, like
Yeah.
they come up with
I mean,
uh, some very like you can say very fancy headlines, very fancy kind of stuff in their copy because most of them are from image advertising. They have seen
yeah.
that entertaining from maybe try to make it entertaining. Okay, so how do you balance both things? It should not be
Well,
boring.
I
Yeah.
think entertaining is good.
Okay.
You know, if you can be entertaining, people want to be entertained. They want to be, I think all the great copywriters, I think their copywriting is entertaining to a degree, right? Dan Kennedy's copy is certainly entertaining in its own way. Um, it's interesting and fun. It's interesting to read. He makes it fun. He does fun analogies of things. He makes clever asides. Um, Gary Halbert's copy, I don't know, it's very entertaining. It's very, it draws you in. It's very interesting to read, right?
Okay.
Jim Rutz's copy was entertaining. Jim Rutz would take you back in time to the Middle Ages and, not since, Heracles walked the earth has there been such a, you know what I mean? And he'd make analogies and he'd say things in Latin every once in a while and use big words and just add like color to, the language. Like you just wanted to keep reading it because it was just so interesting.
Okay.
Um, you know, um, my friend Paris, Paris Lampropoulos, he's a great copywriter and marketer. Um, his writing is more because he comes from a salesman's background. His writing is very like you don't really so much read it because it's interesting as you read it because you feel like it's going to change your life, right? He's telling you things that keeps drawing you in with what you're going to get and what you are getting, right? It's so good like that.
Okay.
Um, Gary Bencivenga's copy is pretty entertaining, right? He's a really good writer. He's a light, funny, intelligent. Um, I can't believe I just read, 40 pages about olive oil. Like, how did this happen? Right? But he took you to where they grow it in Greece, and he told you about the mafia and how olive oil is, got impurities in it. And he took you to the factory and he charmed you with his likable, warmth of style. So, I think that's, John Carlton's copy is entertaining because it's like in your face and it's, tells you stories about, the guy that went to a biker's bar and fought all the people or the golfer that, showed up all his buddies or, it's just that swagger that we all find, entertaining.
Okay, David.
So that was a pretty long digression, but I mean, you have to balance creativity, right? We learned that at Ogilvy that, you can't be creative for its own sake,
Yeah.
right? You have to sell, right? You have to, be like a pitchman. You entertain your audience to get them to listen to the pitch. And
Right.
um, and you don't be creative for its own sake. You be creative for a very strategic reason.
Yeah, right.
Um,
So, David, what psychological triggers you always try to include in your copy? You never try to miss any of it. Yeah,
well, I think you want to, I mean, I think that you can't go, well, there's a couple of things. There's the seven deadly sins, which are always good to think about in terms of triggering, laziness, greed, whatever those seven, I can't even remember them all probably because I'm guilty of most of them and I don't want to think about them. But, you know, you can get a lot from that, right? From just going through that list. You can get a lot from going through psychological triggers of Cialdini, right? His seven influence triggers. Authority. You want to trigger authority. You want to trigger likableness. You want to trigger reciprocity. Look, I gave you all this good information. You should buy this product now. You feel
yeah,
like you should buy this product now. Um, what else does he, a consistency. That's a great
yeah,
psychological trigger. It's like you did this, so therefore it would make sense for you to buy this because you're the kind of person that wants to do right by their family, or you're the kind of person that takes care of their health, or you've shown me to be the kind of person, even by reading this far, you've shown me to be the kind of person that cares about your health, cares about whatever, and therefore would do this, right? Um, so, going through that list. But I think you always want to trigger, well, and the other is kind of, I forget Kyle Mulligan's, uh, it's three things, right? Something should be easy, fast, and big, or whatever it is. I can't remember exactly his three things offhand, but it's kind of easy, fast, and, beneficial, right? You always
yeah,
want to trigger, psychological trigger, but you want to make that clear, right? Doing this will get you big results. It's easy to do it, and it will happen fast, right? Well, then it's a
okay,
no-brainer, right? And the other thing I would say is you want to trigger emotions, right? You want to get maybe them feeling angry about something. You want to get them to, or that you're angry about something. Either you're angry about something or they should be angry about something. Whether you love something, they love something, or you hate something, they hate something.
right,
Even if it's as simple as I hate it when doctors don't tell you about natural herbal cures, or I love it when someone is able to heal themselves fast from this, or, makes me angry that, more people don't know about this thing I'm telling you about. I mean, those are very obvious, heavy-handed ways to do it. But we like emotion. We like reading about emotion and seeing emotion, and, it gets our attention.
yes. So, I remember, David, one sales letter, which is called $1 billion sales letter to young men. So there is a trigger is competitive nature between two friends.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
always try to include in whenever I write copy, I always think about that competitive nature because it is really very natural kind of thing when and law of contrast is also there. Like Robert Cialdini, he mentioned about law of contrast. So when they started young and when after 25 years they met at reunion. So kind of thing. So one is
Hmm.
still a manager and the other is one of the vice chairman or vice president of a company. So that thing, I think it triggers people like because most of the people are like they always trying to compete with their friends, cousins, some near and dear ones.
Hmm.
So that helps. So the next question is related to the same thing. What kind of role storytelling play in copywriting? Because that
Yeah.
I think that story, that short story, was one of the biggest reason that copy worked. Two young men. Okay, $1 billion sales letter, we call it. Okay. So that
Right,
was a
right,
short
right.
story, but it worked a lot. So what role does storytelling play in copywriting? Should we always try to include a story in every copy? I'm just
Well, not
talking from a layman
necessarily. I
point of
don't
view.
think I don't think there are really any rules,
Okay.
like that. I think you should always see would a story be appropriate? Would this be better with a story?
Mm.
You know, um, I think the idea of story is a
That's
very,
what you mentioned. That's why you mentioned screenwriting. That one
yeah,
people should read books on screenwriting.
on screenwriting
Yeah,
and books about the structure of stories, right?
yeah. Structure
Um,
of the story.
because
Mm.
most people have stories and it's just this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened, this happened. It's not, this happened and it got to this awful thing, and then this awful thing happened, but then they climbed back up, right? There's no arc to the
You
story.
mean to
It's
say
just
there should be logic in story? Am I correct? There
yeah,
should be
well,
logic in story. You can't be mindless.
oh,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, or
Mm.
just they shouldn't be flat.
Not
Things
flat.
should happen. There
Okay.
should be ups and downs,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and the logic, I think, is what the South Park guys talk about, which is that it shouldn't just be this happened and this happened and this happened. Should be this happened, and because of that, this happened, and then that caused this to happen,
Right.
and then therefore this terrible thing happened. But then this wonderful thing happened. So you're right. That's a kind of logic. The logic is you don't have and connectors.
Uh,
You have causal connectors.
if I say a word for this, golden thread, like what Marford used to say, golden thread, there should be golden thread. Is it the same thing or different?
It's a little bit the same thing.
Okay.
You're weaving things together, but you're weaving
Okay.
them together not in a boring way, but in a more
Okay.
interesting way. So there's also it's not just connect, 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 connect. It's like connect, 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 connect. You know what I mean? It's got ups and downs because that's what we love, right? We don't. It's not. It's not boy meets girl and they live happily ever after, right? It's like boy finds girl, boy loses girl, boy searches for girl, boy then finds girl again, and they live happily ever after, right? That's basically what is it? Sleepless in Seattle.
Okay.
Yeah, they get together, they lose touch, they decide they're not right, and then their son, the guy's son, tricks them into getting back together at the
Mm.
top of the Empire State Building or something like that. So it's like a wonderful, the suspense, and there's, time, like, oh, what if he leaves before she gets there? And that's what you want in your stories. You don't just want, oh, I looked around, I did some research, and I found this breakthrough thing, right? It's
Okay.
like, oh, well, what were your obstacles? What did who was your Yoda? Who guided you,
Mm.
right? Why were you reluctant to heed the call?
Okay.
So,
Okay then.
and storytelling can be very subtle. Story can be in one sentence, right? Right? The king died, the queen died of grief. Or baby shoes, never, baby shoes for sale, never worn, right? Stories can be really short, could be
Okay.
just injecting a little bit of people doing something into the writing, right? Like we talked about before. It's not the survey, the study results showed. It's, the scientists were shocked to find that it increased, efficacy by 20% or whatever it is. Oh, look, there's people doing things now. There's scientists being shocked and doing findings.
Mm.
So
Okay.
there's a book, Rudolph Flesch, The Art of Plain Talk is a
Okay.
book that we should add to that list. And it talks about exactly that. Talks about making things interesting by people doing stuff
Okay.
instead of just cold explanations of things.
Okay. So David, you are one of the best copywriters. So how much you rely on testing as compared to intuition? Because you have a lot of experience. So still how much you test whenever you are coming with a new idea? Because
Well,
yeah.
um, I increasingly I rely more and more on testing because it's just easier and easier to do, right? And in fact, I'm working with someone right now, and we actually offer a testing service, which is based on a state-of-the-art platform that does, you know, kind of what we like to call testing through the whole funnel, right? It tests not just, oh, did this sales page pull more, but did this change make us get more money down here at the end? Did it increase the upsells? Did it, do whatever, right? And enabling us to test a lot of things at one time. So not just like, oh, let's change the headline and then see what happens, but we can deal with a lot of elements. So, I mean, it's a very sophisticated methodology, and it's for people that have a lot of, 6,000, at least 6,000, 10,000, visitors on their site. But it's been kind of interesting to work together on that and just see what's possible with testing. But I think people just need to be more test conscious. It's like, and especially testing things you think won't work, because that's where the potential is, right? It's the things that it's the hypotheses that you have that you don't know are wrong, that when you change those hypotheses and do things differently based on new hypotheses, that's where the breakthroughs happen. Like, oh, we thought people did this to make money. Turns out they don't do this to make money. Turns out they do this to prove their high school teacher wrong, with that high school teacher that said you'll never amount to anything, right? Like to prove to their friends that they're a success in life, to prove to their brother-in-law at the Thanksgiving table that that they're not the failure that they used to be, right?
Yeah.
Um, or whatever it is, right? We think people buy pills, courses, we think they think certain things, and we base everything on that, right? But if you test, you might find out that basing that on something else might work equally well, right? Maybe we think people like to hate the pharmaceutical companies. So we all write, oh, those fat cat pharmaceutical companies that are ripping you off, right? Maybe they don't. Maybe if we left that out, it would work better. So test that, right? Take things out, put other things in, try a headline that you don't think will work,
Okay,
like
then.
get rich slowly, right? It took a little guts for the client to test that. What do you mean
Yeah.
get rich slowly? We're not going to tell people get rich slowly. Are you crazy, Gary? Right? But to me, a client being nervous about a headline is a great sign that will work,
That will work.
because the same thing that
Okay.
makes the client nervous makes the prospect interested and gets their
Yeah.
attention.
That's a good sign. That's a good way
Yeah.
to find out what will work. Okay,
Yeah,
David.
but te
So,
but test everything. Like if you do,
yes.
don't just do a sale page, do two sales pages. Don't just do an email, do two emails, right? Always at least A/B test and build it, bake it into your system, right? Never write an email or have your copywriters write an email that doesn't have another email that does it differently to test. Like if your headline is a greed headline, right? Like, oh, get all these great things,
Right.
lots of great stuff, right? Then test a fear headline, right? You're about
Yes.
to lose everything you have, right? Both equally valid ways of getting into the copy and selling whatever you're selling, but maybe your market responds better for this product at this time to a greed headline. Or maybe they respond better at this time, right? At this time for this product, maybe they will respond better to a fear headline. Or maybe they'll
Okay.
both work and you can run both and sell even more for a longer time because they won't wear out so quickly.
Yeah. So, as a coach, how do you help young aspiring copywriters find their unique voice in this crowded marketplace? There are so many copywriters. So, how do you help them to
I,
create their own identity? So, because I think there is a
yeah,
term A-list copywriter. So, how much time does it take to become a A-list copywriter?
I wouldn't worry too much about their own identity. I think it's being good, right? There's still such a demand for copywriters who are good, right?
Okay.
It really helps to be dependable and, not charge outrageous amounts of money, which a lot of people are kind of being trained to do these days.
Hmm.
But um, when you're good, people need good copy. AI, no AI, right? Or no AI. They need good copywriting for so many reasons, especially now, right? There's so much copy being generated, testing copy, content is kind of becoming copywriting, right?
Yeah.
Copywriting is kind of becoming content. They're kind of merging together, right? You sell on your blog posts, you sell on your Instagram, you sell, you know, that takes copywriting. Phone scripts for phone people. So the first thing is I would say get good. Study the history of copywriting, read those books, practice, learn to be smart about it. Um, Maybe decide if you want to specialize. I don't like specialization particularly. I've learned so much not specializing, but maybe you want to specialize. I mean, I did specialize in magalogs, I guess, for a long time. And now I sort
Okay.
of specialize in info products and, things like that. But, um, maybe you want to specialize in emails or sales pages, or you want to specialize in health or finance or fitness or, write for life coaches or whatever it is. Um, and maybe you do want to be unique in the same way John Carlton is unique in his kind of ballsy voice that he writes in, or Gary Halbert was unique in his aw shucks, I'm as amazed by this as you are. I got something really good for you, my friend. And he puts his arm around you and, tells you about it like a friend taking you shopping, telling you those pants don't look good on you. These pants look good on you, right? Um, and I mean, my style is kind of witty, right? I make
Okay.
clever
Okay.
analogies. I make little puns. Use little, you know, clever is quite the word, but it's, play with words a little bit, right? Right. Use the same word twice in different ways. And it's kind of like, oh, that's kind of nice. Um, but I think all these things just reflect who those people are, which I guess is why you say find your voice, not create your voice, right? John Carlton is kind of like naturally kind of ballsy is the word, but he's naturally a kind of an in your face, say, I'll tell it like it is guy, down to earth, tell it like it is guy. Gary Halbert wrote exactly the way Gary Halbert talks in real life. First time I ever talked to him on the phone, I was shocked. I thought I was talking to his newsletter.
Okay.
He's warm, he's charming, he's intelligent, he focuses on you. Um, Same thing with Ben Savenga, right? He's likable, he's charming, he's a gentleman, and that's how his copy. It's smart. That's how his copy is. Um, Dan Kennedy, right? The same thing in person. Dan is kind of gruff. I don't think he's as gruff as he comes across in his copy,
Okay.
but he's kind of gruff and stern and a little bit scary, and tells it, not afraid to offend you or tell it like it is, you know. Um,
Right.
so I think it's a matter of which of those people inside me do I want to be, right? And one way to do that is just experiment. Like write some copy that's not for the client, but it's just like, okay, I'm going to try to write like, the angry part of me, or I'm going to try to write like the funny part of me, or I'm going to try to write like the witty, clever, playful part of me.
Okay.
Um,
So,
yeah.
yeah, David. So, one last question. Okay. What is the
Okay.
best advice you have ever received in the world of copywriting? And what kind of advice you would like to give to aspiring copywriters who want to become like you?
I think probably the best advice I got was from John Carlton, which was stop, don't sell from your heels. In other words, if you're on your heels, you're kind of leaning back, right?
Okay.
And I think it's funny. In a way, a lot of people hype what they're doing, which is not really selling. It's just sort of like exaggerating and piling on. Oh, you get this and you get this and you get this. But what John Carlton is talking about is that deep down, how do I make this the solution that my prospect is looking for by understanding what my client is looking really wants in life and relating this to that, right?
Okay.
How do I do that? How do I reach in and grab his deepest desire and make it clear that this is the way to satisfy that deepest desire, right? What's that headline he did for Rodale? How to be the secrets of the best, most respected, you know, lovers in the world or something like that for a book on sex education, I think, or something like that.
Okay.
But that was very interesting. He wasn't like, secrets that'll get you, the women of your dreams and get you, to have sex all day long. It was just like,
Right.
no, this is like to be respected as a lover, right? And because he realized deep down that's what people want.
Yes.
And he was able to focus on that. And I think it's hard sometimes for people to write. I think it's especially hard for people to write about themselves and their own products because it sounds like bragging and it you know, um, sounds like just tooting your own horn or whatever it is. Like if I write something about what I sell and then I see John Carlton write something about what I sell, I just like, oh my God, it's like it's night and day because he's selling the hell out of what I sell, right? And that teaches me a lot. It's like, oh, I have to go back and do this for my own stuff too, and remember to do it for clients. So I
Right.
think that's really the best advice I ever received was stop selling from your heels.
Great advice.
And and I would urge people, don't think you're not selling from your heels just because parts of your copy are hype and exaggeration and piling on benefits, right? Um, and the best advice I ever gave was that the second part of that question?
Yeah. Now, what advice you would like to give to
Oh, what was like
young
oh,
young
oh, oh,
copywriters? Yeah.
that I like that question better. Um, I would say, first of all, write a lot because
Okay.
to a large extent, getting better is simply a function of the amount of words that you've written. So the more words you write, just the better. All other things being equal, the better you're going to get. Handwrite copy, memorize copy, because that gets it into your D. I can tell when I read copy from people. It's like, no, you've never handwritten copy. You've never memorized copy. You couldn't write this if you had done that because the patterns would be in your head of what good copy is, right? You would
It
just
becomes
physically be
natural. It
able.
becomes natural.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And it may not mean you'd be a great copywriter, but you couldn't write garbage like this if you had
Yeah.
done that, right? Um, there's a great story about Gary Halbert's secretary who used to have to transcribe all the stuff that Gary Halbert dictated and wrote because he'd do it on scroll on paper and she'd have to take it and type it. And
I think.
a year or two, she could write copy just like Gary because she had just spent day after day
Yes.
after day,
Yeah.
transcribing what Gary had written. It
We
gotten
call
her,
it modeling.
gotten
We
to her.
call it modeling. In NLP, this word
Oh
is
yeah,
called modeling. Yeah, modeling.
yeah,
So
yeah. The
basically,
NLP model.
NLP was defined in that way, like people who were genius, but they were not able to break down their own what they are doing. So, but like there are two kind of people. You can say one who are genius, but they don't know, but they can't teach others how to break it down. So that's why Dr. Richard Bandler and Dr. John Grinder, who were the co-founders of NLP, so they started
Right.
modeling these people. Milton Erickson is one of the
Yes.
guys.
Yeah.
who they modeled. So this is called
I,
modeling.
th
So you are saying that to write others' copy and you will automatically become better at it.
I think a lot of people who are
Mm.
geniuses because they stumbled on a way of doing something that works for them, right? So Jackson Pollock tried to be a great painter and he tried to do painting like everybody else. And then one day he
Yeah.
got the idea to just throw paint on the canvas. And lo and behold, he could throw paint on a canvas like no one else because he
Yes.
was able to do it randomly enough, yet with a certain energy that he created those great masterpieces.
Right.
And Descartes once said, he said, you know how I got to be Descartes from an ordinary thinker? Was just I kept anyone that whenever I read something and whenever I heard an argument, I would think, how can I do that better? And that's how I became the great thinker that I am today. So it wasn't like he was a natural born genius, but he found that worked for him. That might not work for someone else, although it's a pretty good thing to do, right? To always rewrite copy, to always rewrite arguments. But he found something, that worked for him. And,
Yes.
it's the same kind of thing. Even Gary Halbert probably, you know, he just found that writing just like he talks and going into bars and talking to people about it and then sitting down to write it, that worked for him. And if he hadn't
Sometimes I
discovered,
Sometimes I wonder, David, how Claude Hopkins became such a great copywriter because at that time there were no books, very few books.
right, right,
So, but his copy is one of the best copies till date. Whatever he wrote, whether it's selling beer or yours or anything else, uh,
yeah,
the soap, so many things. Okay, so the copy he has written without reading
yeah.
books, without attending any courses or any
Well,
coaching programs.
see, that's why reading My Life in Advertising is so interesting because it talks
Yeah.
about how he was a preacher before, or
Yes.
his father was a preacher. I can't remember.
Father was a
But
preacher.
yeah, but hey, when you're a preacher, you know how to sell. You're selling nothing. You're selling religion. You're selling feeling
Yeah.
good,
Right. Right.
right? And he was able, and probably a lot of people are preachers or studied, you know, for that and aren't good copywriters or aren't good writers. But he somehow was able to take that and translate it into, writing.
Right.
And it's not a bad idea to study, preachers, listen to recordings. You'll see how they use rhythm. You'll see how they use repetition. You'll see how they use emotion. These are all things that you can learn from
Yes.
and be a far more powerful copywriter, marketer.
Yeah, David. So, David, thank you so much sharing your wisdom, sharing all these insights. So, if do you teach online? Can anyone approach you and learn directly from you? Is it possible? Or do you teach only selective copywriters? Uh, if
Yeah, I
anyone
mean,
from another country wants to learn from you, is it possible? Or you just teach face to face in a
yeah, no,
classroom kind of
there's
content?
a couple of things. My private coaching is pretty expensive,
Okay.
but certainly worth it if you're already making money from copywriting. And like if I can double someone's copywriting income, if they're
Yes.
already making, you know, $50,000 a year, that's $100,000 a year. If they're only making, you know, $2,000 a year, and I double it to four, it's not, it's not worth paying me thousands of dollars.
Right.
But I do have a coaching group,
Okay.
called the Inner Circle, which is
Inner
just
circle. Okay.
$97 a month. And it's a great way to get personal because you get personal attention. You have the opportunity for that. You also get now it comes with two of my courses, the
Okay.
A-list copywriting secrets and the idea course. Um, so you can get that at speakingofwriting.com and then DDIC, David Deutsch Inner Circle, DDIC.
Okay.
Um, or you can just go to, speakingofwriting.com and just sign up for my email list and get my e-letter.
Okay.
That works too. And you can get in touch with me. We can get in touch with me there.
Okay. That's great, David. That's great. Thank you so much. for
Oh,
all
my
this
pleasure.
information.
It's great to
Thank
talk to you. You asked very interesting
Same here.
questions. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you. So it's just my curious mind. So I always try to find out your thought process, the genius thought process, and try
Right,
to,
right, right.
yeah, explore his thoughts, because the main thing is your mindset. How do you approach this craft? That is very
Yeah.
important.
I mean, that's how I teach copywriting. I teach mindset, really. Like,
Yeah,
yeah, there are formulas, there are templates, there are tricks, you know, there are ways to think about things, but really, it's just a matter of shifting your mindset.
that's great, David. Thank you so much. Thank you
Oh, my
so much.
pleasure.
Yeah.
Take care.
Take care. Yeah. Bye. That was an incredible conversation with David Deutsch, a true master of his craft. If you want to learn more about the world of direct response advertising, particularly copywriting, and take your skills to the next level, be sure to check out David's work on his website. Thanks for tuning in to the Vibhor Asri podcast. And remember, the right words can change everything. Catch you next time.